Hi, everyone, and welcome to People First podcast. This episode is going to be in many ways special, and for all of you, it's going to be the first episode in English. So that's special number one. And there is a special story for me personally with our today's guest. And I'm super happy to welcome Laurie Ruettimann, an HR influencer, an author of a book, a podcaster, and also an HR specialist. So, Laurie, welcome.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This is so special for me, my first Ukrainian podcast.
Yay! We are not making it in Ukrainian though, but baby steps.
Maybe so. Yes, correct.
So, Laurie, maybe there is something that you would like to share about your HR journey with our audience so that they get to know you a little bit better.
Sure. Well, I started to work in human resources when I was in college. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and there was an opening for an internship. And my university said, go ahead, take this internship. You can see marketing, you can see sales, operations. And it turns out I just like people. And I was very good at understanding the human story and how to solve problems. And many years later, here I am today, still working and writing and thinking about the world of work and labor and the economy. And my people will always be human resources and recruiting professionals.
You said writing. Are you working on another book?
I am always working on another book. It's a perpetual problem of mine. I have like 5 books going, but I am really interested in telling stories and bringing good ideas to light. And so I have one book idea that I'm pretty far along on about writing about the intersection of work and alcohol. Because in many cultures all around the world, people come together and unite around drinking. And so I want to explore that, what it means for inclusion, what it means for the next generation of workers, and whether or not that translates truly like we think it translates. So it is different in Japan versus the United States versus Cuba. So I am fascinated by all of these stories. So that's what I've been focused on.
So you're in your researcher mode,
Yeah,
right?
I am. I'm
Okay.
drinking a lot. No, I'm just kidding. I actually don't drink so much anymore because that's the other interesting thing. Worldwide, global trends around drinking are declining. People are, especially in, America and some other countries, are more interested in going to work, spending time at work, and then coming home and not drinking as much. They may be using different escape
Substances.
mechanisms, right? But alcohol consumption, especially around like cocktails, is declining. And so for me in my own life, I'm just tired now. I'm a Gen Xer. I don't want to drink as much. So
Interesting.
I am fascinated by all of this. Yes.
Okay, so I will be on the lookout for your new book.
Yeah, maybe 2027. That's what it looks like. Yeah.
I like the long-term plans. These days it's quite hard to plan so much in advance, and then you have this great thing happening to you in 2 years.
Yeah. Well, it takes a while to publish a book. Like that's what I learned on my last journey with my book, Betting on You. You write the book, you sell it to a publisher. And so I already have a publisher. And then you write it, it goes through editing, and then it takes time to cut down trees and print the book. Like all of these things I didn't consider. And so when you turn the book in, it still takes a year to get it to market.
Really?
Yeah. Even with and I won't just do audiobooks, but
Hmm.
I'll cut down I won't cut down the trees, but they will cut down the trees to make the books.
Hmm.
And then you have to record the audio podcast and it has to go through several revisions. And so it's a process. And also there's a pre-launch strategy that goes into that as well to get people excited about it. And that
Hmm.
takes a few months. So if I turn in the book this year, it won't come out until 2027.
Okay, but as an HR influencer, you know how that things are done, right?
Yeah.
Warming up the crowd.
I do. You have to get people excited. Yeah.
So my first question would be like, what's cooking for you now in HR consultancy? So what projects are you working now on?
Yeah. Well, right now in the world of HR and talent and recruitment, everybody is talking about skills. How about for
Mhm.
you? Are they talking about skills?
Yes,
Yes.
like skills-based interview, skills-based performance, and so on.
Everything.
Mhm.
And like, what does that mean? And so I'm helping organizations to figure out what that really means and what it doesn't mean. And
Mhm.
also, a lot of my focus is really helping leaders stop thinking about credentialing necessarily and, meeting certain goals in terms of like career achievements and thinking more holistically about skills. And what does that mean? What kind of skills do you need as a leader
Mhm.
today and also tomorrow? Then, if you intersect AI and look at the future of the workforce, what skills do you need to manage and motivate people who are going to be working primarily in a different modality? So it's all very confusing and complicated, but I think there's one thread, number one, that I just see over and over again. And it's like, how do you just be more of yourself and more human in all of this? And managers and leaders are thinking about this nonstop. I
Mhm.
don't know if they're vulnerable enough yet, but they are definitely thinking about what it means to be human in the upcoming world of AI.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the only thing that we can be like that's special about us as humans, right?
Yeah, we say
Versus
that. We say
artificial.
that.
Mhm.
But I think sometimes we forget and we try to be more robotic, more
Mhm.
AI in our own ways, and we fail. We look like losers because we're never going to be as smart or as quick or as analytical as a bot or an algorithm, right? But we can be more empathetic or more compassionate, or we can draw from witnessed lived experience to not make the same mistakes over and over again. So, drawing on
Mhm.
those skills will become more and more important.
So, would you say that this is already a request from the leaders, but not something that HR people are trying to get buy-in on
I
from them?
think this is definitely a request from the leaders. And, I do a lot of work with LinkedIn, and by and
Mhm.
far, the content that I produce, the content that I deliver, the consulting gigs that I do are really driven by leaders and managers to focus on skills. And I think HR is truly trying to figure out what that means because they are still very much rooted all over the world in compliance. And so it's hard to reconcile something amorphous, something indescribable like skills with compliance, which is the underpinning of everything we have historically done. So there's tension there, if that makes sense. And I'm interested in those stories of where there's tension, and I'm also interested in stories where HR can grow and maybe let go of some of it and let leaders think more about skills. It doesn't have to be an HR responsibility. This can be driven by leaders and managers as well.
Yeah, but I think you mean that we all need to be a little bit more adults, right? Like this approach where adult is talking to an adult.
Yes, yes, I think so. And more realistic, right? About what we can do, what's within our purview, and what isn't within our responsibilities. So, this idea that in the future, HR will be a partner to the business in different ways, maybe, but there's always historically been a little bit of tension with HR. And I don't know that that's ever going to go away.
That's nice that you brought up the topic of this partner thing
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I was just wondering whether you see this trend in the US, where I think you primarily work and consult in the US or
Mhm.
also abroad.
Yeah. Oh, abroad as well. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you have even a bigger
I
overview
do.
of the
Yeah.
situation. So in Ukraine, I still feel that HR is usually like an administrative function in many ways. Of course, there are great examples of this partnership relations between business and HR or people teams, but it's more of an administrative function still. Do you feel that this trend is moving on in the world or it's still there in US, for example?
Well, HR technology companies would love for the trend to be that everything that is administrative would be technology based in the future through.
Charged $30 per person per
E-
month.
Correct, correct. So you don't need an HR business partner. You don't need somebody. You just need agentic AI to do this. And I think what is happening is that many HR departments in America and also globally are starting to think about this. And some are jumping on this trend of really reworking their HR department and getting rid of a lot of that administrative function and giving it to tools and platforms, right? But they also find that there are limitations with these tools and platforms. And then they rehire back some of these HR professionals. So, I saw this very early in my career with the rise of applicant tracking systems and then the rise of Workday and the rise of success factors, right? Many of these larger companies. And then in the 2010s, with a lot of these other platforms that kind of merged into the ecosystems, we always try to get rid of administrative HR and say the people who remain are going to be the ones who are strategic. But it turns out we still need administrators. We still need to fill the gaps of technology. Technology can't do it all. So I think you're right. Administrative HR still exists and it's still seen that way. There's this trend to push them out, but then there are these rebound hires. So I don't know how to fix all of this, but it's this constant cycle of trying to get rid of HR and administration and streamline it and then hiring them back. So I don't have any answers for this.
Mhm.
This is why I still have a job. So helping people think about it and talk about it and work around it and plan for it. I will always have a job because companies, I don't know, they're short-sighted in the way they think about HR. Yeah.
That's interesting because I think that it is impossible to live in the world where all the HRs are strategists because there will always be some operational work. It's nice to limit it a bit. So like, I don't know, the basic things to be automated,
Yeah.
but also like we're talking about this HR spark in the world, right? It's impossible not to talk about it. But what I see in Ukraine, in many companies, there are still like so many people who do everything with their hands, like Excel sheets, not even without HR management systems. So I think that number one step would be just to start automating. I'm not even talking about AI. It's like basic automation, then maybe using more tools.
Correct. I have worked with organizations abroad from the United States that are beginning their automation journey, but are, I think, hampered or stopped by local government regulation, whether it's on data or privacy or, time and accounting measures that they have to follow. And so they would like to automate, or they've gone down the journey and automated as much as they can. But because of local municipal rules or government regulations, they're just not allowed to do it. So they're doing what they can. But many organizations now globally think that their perfect, beautiful end state is to get rid of HR and to have as few HR professionals as possible,
Mhm.
and everything else is going to be technology. And I am here to tell you that's been a dream for many years, and it is never going to happen. The human experience of work, the human complexities of work are just too varied. There are so many variables that you cannot rely on technology for all of this. Now, many people think the future of work doesn't have anything to do with humans at all. And that's another big story that we can talk about with AI. But as long as you have one person performing work for you, you are going to need a human to help navigate all of this. So that's how I feel about HR and automation.
Uh, I totally agree what you're saying here because currently my team is overgoing the performance review process and it's slightly automated, but there are still so many things that we are helping to maintain. And also there are so many requests people-wise, like how to better give this feedback, how to better receive this feedback, how shall we have this conversation, and so on and so forth. So it's like, we have this HR management system. We are not using that much of AI here, but still, and this is hell of a month for my team. So it's really hard to imagine what has to change so that we disappear and everything goes smoothly, because it doesn't go smoothly even with us on board.
Well, there are companies here in America, like one company is called Whisk, and they really believe that if a manager has questions about how to better give or receive feedback, or an employee, they should be able to ask an AI bot,
Uh-huh.
and that bot will give them a response,
Mhm.
or that bot will drive them to online learning, right?
Yeah.
That where they could learn. But the problem is time, attention, and also sometimes these online answers are incomplete or lack nuance. And so what you find is people going to these resources and then still coming back with questions like, wait a second, I understand how to better give feedback, but what if my employee is dealing with some mental health issues?
There is always context when we deal with people.
That's right. And that context, to automate that out is cruel and inhumane and unrealistic. And that's where I see some of the technology going. It's just cruel, inhumane, and unrealistic. We need to appreciate the complexity of the human condition. And that's why I think you and I will always have jobs.
Well, good for us.
Yeah, I hope so. We understand that.
And Laurie, what's your favorite use cases for AI in HR area? Do you have some that like you recommend mostly or you use yourself?
Well, I'm going to be technology agnostic here and not like pick one technology or the other. But I do think there's a big case to be made for the improvement of communication with AI, of being more efficient, more direct, of being more inclusive, removing language that's inappropriate or maybe read incorrectly. So I think whether you're communicating one-on-one or manager and employee or HR to a large group of people, it makes things like change management a little bit more effective. It makes inclusion a little bit more effective. And it also it can help us to tailor our messages if we're working on a global platform or to a global employee base, tailor it to that audience. So I think AI and communication actually is helpful. I think there's also the case to be made for thoughtful resume screening with AI. Like a lot of people are very worried about what AI can do, but with the right language models being built in and with the right oversight and with continual auditing, we can get pretty good at doing a first pass on inbound resumes that are coming in. And that's been very popular and very, very successful in a lot of organizations here in the United States and in some countries in Western Europe. I will tell you though, even with all the AI automation with resumes, people still get hired based on who they like, who knows them, who trusts them, right? So there's still this back channel. So I don't know that we ever get rid of that, but I think the case can be made for high volume hiring, large moments where we have to hire a lot of people, frontline workers, as we call them in America, that AI can be helpful with that.
Speaking of how you are hired and what's more efficient, I see the tendency that networking is getting only more and more helpful when looking for a job. Of course, like we are talking about, I must say here that I'm talking about IT industry, quite well-paid jobs, maybe some specific roles. But still, I see that networking helps you much more than like using more job boards or having an amazing CV.
I think you're right. There will always be what I would like to call an elite group of workers who get hired through their connections, who they like, who likes them, who knows them, who trusts them. But those jobs are actually shrinking globally, so like the kind of workers here in America, the sector that's been hit the most through all of this through the disruption has been technology. And so the amount of jobs that pay those amazing figures, right, and have all the perks is shrinking. So networking is still very effective in that. But for us, networking in the healthcare industry, that's not necessarily the way. Networking in retail, networking in front-facing consumer roles, that's not effective either. So I think you're right. For an elite upper echelon of jobs, unfortunately, you're right. Networking is the way to go. But that makes up such a small amount of the population of jobs in most countries. Farming, agriculture, manufacturing, networking is not the same. But maybe for like marketing jobs, yes, absolutely. And when there are fewer and fewer jobs, you absolutely want to connect with the people you know. But I don't know if that's the future of work. What do you think?
Well, the thing is that I was thinking mostly about my reality and, about this IT related and digital positions. So it makes total sense with this elite jobs. I like how you put it. But then if you look broader and like with the blue collar workers, it definitely works a little bit different. But that's not something I work closely with. So,
I mean, It's all relative to where our industry is, but we know that as human resources leaders, talent leaders, professionals, the industry that we're in today may not be the industry we're in tomorrow.
For
And
sure.
so while I love people who specialize in human resources and technology, the way the world is going, we may one day work in human resources, but in the retail space or in healthcare. Our careers are long. We have a lot of different jobs. And so it's good to be aware of how people find work in our industry, but also to be aware of what's happening in other sectors of the economy as well.
I like how you made this connection to the next question that I wanted to ask you, and you didn't know about it. So the question is about the skills that we as HR professionals should be on the lookout for. Because, yeah, staying relevant is something that I'm really interested in, as a professional, because I want to work for a long period of time. I love what I do. And I think that even if it's not something in the HR area, it's going to be people related anyways. So it's clear that being interested in the technologies is useful. I mean, we don't need to become developers, all of us, but still it's nice to know what's happening there. The other thing I've heard from you is probably curiosity and flexibility, like looking around and being able to adapt to what's needed and going there and not being afraid to, right? Anything else?
Yes, I like this idea of it's not even curiosity, but it's the constant drive to learn new things about the world, even if they don't have anything to do with our jobs. All learning is worthwhile.
Okay.
When you are learning, you are growing. And when you are growing, you are thriving. And I think the people who do well in human resources learn beyond HR. They pay attention to politics. They like art. They're creative. They, are athletic. They do the things they love. And they bring all of that good stuff, not only back to their life and their lived experience, but to their jobs. And it helps us become good at pattern recognition. It helps us provide context, which is a theme that we've been talking about. And it also just makes us more relatable and likable. So I believe in curiosity, but I also just believe in being a lifelong learner. And so for me, that has meant a lot of different things. Like when I worked in human resources early in my career, I didn't know much about human psychology, but I pursued that as an interest, right? And so I know that now when I have interactions with both leaders and employees, I've got this body of knowledge in human psychology. But I also like art. And I like reading about, human history. And I love stories like old time stories about like religion, even though I'm not particularly religious. It helps me understand the way that the world worked, right? So anyway, what I'm trying to say is that all learning is worthwhile. So it's beyond being curious, but it's about taking an active role and pursuing a life where you just are just enjoying all aspects of it. So, you and I both share a love of fitness, right?
We do.
We do. So it was really important for me as I was learning how to weightlift, not only to understand how to deadlift, but the way the body is working. And I have to tell you, it has made me much more interested in office ergonomics and the way that people sit and hold their bodies during the day, because I look at people now and I'm like, oh my God, you're going to break your back. So in a way that I never quite understood until I started weightlifting, right? Or the way they like slump or hold their head. I'm like, that does not indicate a well person, a person who's cognitively and physically excited to take on new challenges, right? It makes me aware of nutrition in a way that I know you have to not only fuel yourself just to work, but you have to fuel yourself to think and be fun and interesting and enjoyable. And now when I deal with managers, leaders, and employees who are cranky and prone to conflict, I ask questions like, tell me about your sleeping history. Tell me about what you're eating. It's all connected. It's all related. So this is beyond curiosity. This is just about like being a person who's engaged in the world. That's, I think, the skill that we need, not just to be good human resource professionals, but just to be good people.
I love what you're saying here. So do you think that if there is an HR, I don't know, any role who doesn't feel the interest in what's happening around, like not much energy, like that. Do you think that this person could be successful in the role in general?
I don't think people who are tired and disinterested can be successful at anything.
Yeah.
And I think we have to have inner leadership, self-leadership. We have to be individually accountable to show up, to feed ourselves, to get rest, to be around people we love, to not be on social media so much, like all of it. We have that obligation. And if we're not doing that, we cannot be good at our work. I know this firsthand. I've lived this life where I've been tired. I tried to fuel myself on like Coca-Cola and candy. I was traveling so much for work. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. And I was not a good human resources leader. I was not. I was getting my job done, but I was not empathetic and kind and curious and like thinking about the company in helpful ways. I was mostly just in survival mode. And I worry about this, not just in human resources, but across all of our entire world. Many of us, a majority of us, I mean, as you know, are surviving. And I think we have to make the individual choice to thrive. Even when circumstances are tough, even when they're difficult, even when our families are terrible or our politics are terrible, our government is terrible, we can still make a choice to thrive as best we can. And I think that's why I love watching you. I mean, you have a commitment to thriving, and it's just been beautiful to see. Very
Thank you,
inspiring.
Laurie. Yeah, likewise. So yeah, I think that if the person is not interested in developing him or herself, even the best leader or the best ever HR will never save you or help you, because it's really hard to help someone who is not looking for that help.
Yeah, I think you're right. And also, if you're in that leadership role or you're in that HR role, maybe you're doing fine today. Maybe you're meeting your, KPIs and all your metrics and all of that. But this is not a long-term plan. This is not sustainable. You may be a good leader today and you may be a good leader for the next 5 years, but eventually you will burn out and you will do more damage to your career, and it may be irreparable. So if you can hear my voice, I always tell people, you have an obligation and a responsibility, if you're listening to me right now, to do just a couple of key things in your life to make sure that you're rested, you're replenished, and you're taking advantage of opportunity that comes in, that you are working on yourself so that not only you live a good life, but that you're of service to other people. And if you have the privilege of hearing my voice, it is your message that it's never too late. It's always, the time is now. You can start today and you could take a little bit better care of yourself so that down the road, your career is thriving and you can take good care of other people.
And what was the trigger for you personally to change this approach in your life? Was there some special event, or I don't know, you were motivated by a book? I don't know if it's okay to share.
Yeah, it is. I was motivated by just a complete and total moment of burnout and just exhaustion. I was at an airport working for a company called Pfizer. I don't know if many of your listeners will know Pfizer. They worked on like a
quite well known
COVID
in
vaccine.
Ukraine.
Yeah, global pharmaceuticals, just a little tiny company. So I was working for Pfizer and I was flying all over, laying people off, and I wasn't feeding myself and I was tired. And at the airport, I sneezed. I was 29 years old and I threw out my back.
Oh, Jesus.
I was like, what is happening here? It's like, this is embarrassing. Yes. I was slow and sluggish and cranky and ornery. And that night at the airport, I was not eating well and just like spacing out, waiting for my flight. And I thought to myself, why is Pfizer always taking care of itself? Pfizer always has money for itself. There's always money for the leaders. And why are all these people thriving and I'm not thriving? And it's because I was not putting my well-being first. I was not setting boundaries. I was too afraid. But afraid of what? I wasn't doing well. I wasn't thriving. And so I didn't quit that job right away because, I have to pay my bills. I have to pay for my house and all of that. But eventually, slowly, I just started taking better care of myself, making a plan, looking at other opportunities that might be more aligned with what I wanted, with my values. And eventually, I changed jobs and said, no more. I can't do this anymore. And I just wish so many HR professionals and so many leaders didn't have to hit rock bottom, have to hit the bottom before digging themselves out. So when I talk about leadership, when I talk about technology, all of that is fine. Skills, all of that education that I do, all of that consulting I do is fine. But if you didn't eat breakfast, you're not going to learn from me. You're not hearing me. You have to eat breakfast. If you're sleeping poorly, you're not going to have the cognitive bandwidth to even understand what I'm saying. So I need people to take better care of themselves so that we in turn can solve these big problems in HR and in our corporation.
Yeah, I mean, it's all connected. It's very hard to be efficient at work, no matter what work you do, if you don't take basic care of your body.
And how can we like solve for automating in HR or solve for AI and think
Yeah.
about the future of how we pay people? You know, we're moving globally to a new crypto economy. How are we going to be able to be a part of this if we're sluggish, if we've opted out, if we're burnt out? We can't participate. So if you want to have a thriving career, if you want to be helpful, if you love human resources, if you love talent, it starts with you. We fix work for other people by fixing ourselves first. So nothing, I will just speak candidly, pisses me off more often than going to do a consulting session, a training session, and people are falling asleep on me in the first 10 or 15 minutes. It's not me. I am delightful.
For sure.
I am wonderful, you know? I'm like, what did you have for breakfast? Nothing? Oh, well, this makes sense. Okay, you know? So anyway, don't get me started. I will go off on a tangent, but we need to take better care of ourselves.
It was worse filming this episode only for this 3 minutes. I say, yeah, it's just, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
It's just, it's like, you know, basic stuff, but we all need to be reminded about it. And we might, as HR specialists, we might be taking so much care about our teams and our people, but then for many of my colleagues, you're not on the first spot in your life and you're not your main project. So there should be a like change in the mindset, right?
Yeah. I remember when I worked in human resources, I had a conversation with an employee who was always in conflict with other people and he was late for work. And I just had it with him. And I'm like, I don't want to put you on a performance improvement plan. Why can't you just be an adult? And I gave him this long lecture and he said, Laurie, how many people do you like on your team? And I didn't like anybody. I was always in conflict. I thought, okay, buddy, we're not talking about me. We're talking about you. But that was also a wake-up call for me because he was right. I constantly was like, oh, this person is dumb or they don't do what they say they're going to do. Like I always hated working in human resources, you know? And I thought, my God, he's right. I am a pain in the ass for so many people. So we have a saying here in America, physician, heal thyself, right? So doctors, you need to fix yourself before you can actually be of service to your patients. And so I needed to do some work on myself in order to get very good in this world of human resources and working and writing. I needed to fix me. Yeah.
I think this saying relates to HR profession so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so there is another thing, like quite shortly, but I would love to hear your thoughts on this trend of return to office. And like before you start, I will just share shortly that in Ukraine, it's also a thing, even though it's not always safe on a physical level to be in the office building because most of the buildings don't have shelters. And then like a couple of recent days were quite calm, but it's totally okay to have one air alarm per day, for example, per work day. And I will be like sincere with you. I don't go to shelter almost never, but that's because I'm lazy. And that's also, I think, one important thing is that the only person that I'm currently responsible for in my life is myself. So that's how I explain it to myself in my mind. If I had someone to take care of, probably I would think differently. But still, so imagine.
Wait, I want to interrupt because people love you and you have an obligation to the people who love you, people who care about you like me, to take good care of yourself. If you were in a strike and injured or killed, it would break my heart. and I am thousands of miles away from you. So I want you to put that on your mind. I know you only have a responsibility to yourself, but there are other people who love you and learn from you and care about you. So I think that's really important. But this point you make about return to office is complex in Ukraine, but it's happening all over.
Yeah.
And it's built on such a stupid idea that we need proximity to connect, and we need proximity to collaborate. We need proximity to be more productive. And I think, yes, humans are social creatures, but what have we invested in the internet for? What have we invested in all this technology for, only to come and sit in these ugly offices with no culture and look at our computers all day long? These are like farms. These are not offices. So you say return to office. I say return to the factory or return to farm, because that's what it feels like. It is so stupid, and it's not built on a level of trust.
But it's common.
Yeah.
But it's common.
Very common. Very common. It's common globally. And I think leaders are blaming employees for financial issues. They're saying, oh, our employees are not as productive as they used to be, when in truth, the economy is changing. The world is changing, and workers are becoming like a scapegoat. And it's also part of this surveillance culture that we have in many offices, where I want to watch you. I want to make sure you're really working. And this is a 20th century way of thinking about work in the 21st century. And it infuriates me. And the complexity in Ukraine drives me crazy as well. That is insulting. So yeah. I'll tell you how I really feel. There you go.
Yeah, but I appreciate that, frankly, because I like the hybrid approach a lot. So like, for example, today I'm filming this episode from the office. We have a shelter in the office. And when I was talking to some possible employers, that was like a super important thing for me, because especially in HR, it's almost like in 90% of roles, it's mandatory for you to be in office almost daily. But for other roles, it's not so mandatory. Let's put it this way. It's more flexible, which I hate, double standards.
Yes, the double standard is really unfortunate, and also can be biased for some people and not inclusive for other people, because the majority of people who work in human resources are women. At least that's globally, that's the trend. And many are parents, and whereas people who work in engineering or IT may not fit that same bill, right? And they have more flexibility. It doesn't make sense.
So I think that we are aligned on this.
Yeah, we are aligned. I think so. But is it going to change anytime soon? We need influential people to keep reminding leaders that the future of work isn't based on physical proximity. It's based on outcomes and shared missions and visions and values. And if you can get that work done in a hybrid way or a remote way, that's also okay too.
Yeah, like I like the concept of offsite meetings once in a while. If you can do that, please. So I do believe in the offline magic. If we meet from time to time, and every time you have met someone in person, the relations will be totally different, much better for sure. But especially in the conditions that we now live in Ukraine, you need to be more considerate.
I would agree. But in the history of humankind, when have employers really prioritize the needs of employees? They're better now, but capitalism, which is what we all kind of operate under, this weird form of capitalism, trickle down and all of that, still benefits leaders, and what they say goes. So as long as they think it's better for us to all come in the office, I don't know how we're going to fight that.
Laurie, I can't believe that we're talking for almost 40 minutes, and we agreed on the length of the episode in advance. So the last thing I want to ask you is, maybe there is something that I haven't asked you, but you feel like sharing with the HR community and the leaders in Ukraine. Just the, open mic, anything you would like to share?
Well, I would like to share that so often in America, we look inwardly and we think that what we do in human resources or talent or learning and development is the gold standard for the world. But I think that's changing, and more of us are open to learning about the world of work from, people in Ukraine, people in Poland, people in Japan, even people in China, right? There's more, I think, cross-cultural collaboration that's starting. So I think anytime anybody who's listening to this meets with an American HR professional, you can assume we're narcissistic a little bit. We only think about ourselves, but we are definitely opening up more to hearing about the new way to approach work. So share your stories. Tell us your stories. Insist that we shut up and listen, because we need to learn, we need to hear it. And more of us want to hear these stories about the way the world works. We're not so imperialist, at least a majority of us, as we seem. We're open to new ways of thinking. So please share your stories more and more.
Thank you. And it is like a perfect pre-story before my story of how we met, because I really wanted to share that why this episode is so special to me, because in 2023 I reached out Laurie, who is as I said in the introduction, she's a podcaster and she has this punk rock HR podcast that I was listening to and I just reached out to her and asked if it's okay to invite myself to her podcast episode and speak about what it's like to be an HR in wartime. And she said yes.
Of course I said
you
yes.
replied so quickly. I was impressed. And then we had this episode and I mean, I'm so happy that it happened. And then recently we were talking with my co-host Anya about we should invite more guests. And I was like, I will ask Laurie. And again, you said yes. So
Of course.
I really appreciate your openness, because I can imagine that there is a lot happening for all of us. But you found the time again. So thank you. Thanks a lot. And I wish you luck with your next book and with all the projects. And we will definitely be in touch.
Well, thank you. And I just want to say that the next time we meet, let's do a live podcast where I see you in person and we record. That should be the goal. We will make this happen. That is one of my bucket list ideas to do. So let's make that happen. Let's meet in real life.
Thank you, Laurie. And thank you everyone for listening, and we'll be in touch.